Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to take your LinkedIn profile and make it into a website using Gamma, Claude, or Lovable. Let's jump in. We're going to dive into the demonstration of vibe coding, how to use your LinkedIn profile to extract a PDF, and then we're going to try what this prompt actually gets us on a couple of the tools that I like the most, specifically Lovable, Gamma, and then Claude. So I have this prompt right here. It's obviously not perfect, but there's a couple of elements that I wanted to demonstrate, specifically the website part from the PDF as a input source, as a goal to illustrate job experience, credentials, and my current mission. So those are kind of the three areas that I wanted to focus on when referring to my PDF LinkedIn profile, if you will. And as a particular design, I wanted to focus on a minimalistic design. I wanted to use hues of my brand color, which is 742EE. As far as design goes, I wanted to use hues of my brand color with white text. My color is particularly dark. It's a dark purple. And what usually happens when I add that in is it tends to bring in also black. So I added white text to stand out for the contrast against the background. And I really love source code Pro, so I wanted to use that as a font. The background, I do want it to have some type of grain to it for a more modern aesthetic for these types of new sites. And as for calls to action, which are essentially the buttons that you want people to click, I'll put my LinkedIn profile, my website, and then my email. And for any additional filler content, I'll have it refer to my site to pull. And then obviously, whenever I finish one of these prompts for a particular, site, app, or design piece, before I would actually go into the code, before I would take it to that next stage to go under the hood, I would always ask it to optimize for UX and UI. This generally tends to clean everything up once you add it to the end, and sometimes it can help you have a lower failure rate after you get into these deep projects after you're going into them and before you have to go into them manually. All right, so right in Lovable, what we're going to do is go right into the prompt area. I'm going to throw in this prompt. It does have my website here. It does have my LinkedIn profile, so I'm hoping that it kind of pulls and does this accordingly. This isn't the area where I added a PDF to Lovable. I don't have the Pro account or the upgraded account, so I don't have that functionality if it does exist. So this should suffice, as all of the information into which I would be using as a PDF is essentially on either my LinkedIn profile or my site. So as you can see, it's signifying that it's going to build a minimalistic site. It's finding my mission. And now it's able to essentially go and start to execute on those other parts of the code using kind of my constraints as a swim lane in production. And as this is going on, what I'll also do is I'll throw into Gamma. We're going to create a new one. And as this continues to go on, I'm going to go to Gamma, and then we're going to create new, and I'm going to import from a file. Give me one moment. I'll upload my profile. We'll throw that in. We're going to continue, create a web page. We're going to continue here. And what it will now do is continue to go through the background off of like a initial PDF, kind of almost notepad type of approach. I do think it allows us to condense and add detailed designs here. This is where I would probably add images if I wanted to. For format, back to web page, we're going to hit continue here. And this is where we essentially see our preview. So let's go with like a dark and professional. I always like the dark and the purple colors. And from there, you'll hit generate. And what it's going to do is essentially create this web document off of that PDF that we used. And then what we're going to do is go to Claude, and we're going to start a new project. And this project is going to be my artifact LinkedIn site artifact PDF upload from LinkedIn profile. All right, so we're going to create that project. We're going to throw in the file right here, and then throw in the prompt. And here is where you can pick Sonnet or Opus. Usually Opus, so I'm just going to kind of go with the conservative pick here, and we will throw that guy in there. So here we see it going through my LinkedIn. It's creating obviously the same thing. Now it's also fetching additional data from my site, which is great. So it's looking at some of my metadata right off the bat. And here we can go into Lovable. Sometimes it's easy to kick off a particular prompt in one AI tool, go to the next and go to the next, because sometimes you're going to be waiting for 5 or 10 minutes. If you're using GPT Deep Research, that's obviously something else you're also going to be waiting for. Here we can see my actual profile. It brings in my name. It brings in my title. It has a lot of my information here. Let's see if this does go to my LinkedIn. Yes, it does. This does go to my site. Yes, it does. So right off the bat, it looks like this one's working particularly well. The functionality is always the big thing that you want to check right initially, at least. And then what we're going to see here is a bit of a drop off between professional experience. So, I mean, right here, there's a gap, right? I mean, obviously, the next thing would be to try to condense this gap. What other imagery could I add? Is there other types of, imageries that I could upload? Would I have to generate imagery? Would it make sense to add some type of motion in the background? This is one I actually love to do. I'd love to add flying toasters to the background. Please ensure they not taking a toll. Oh, we'll take that there, but you can see it's a pretty good kind of overview of my professional details and the current mission. And then this is something that you could all do if you ever wanted to just create like a quick web resource, for people to refer to. Pretty cool. It has the, professional philosophy at the bottom, which I like. So I've thrown in this prompt here. We're going to try to change the background. And now we're going to go to Gamma. Now, Gamma is really cool. Gamma is one of the coolest marketing tools for actually taking those more, I'd say, intermediate versus complex use cases pertaining to the design elements of AI output. So whereas GPT, whereas Grok, whereas Gemini, Claude, all of these different tools have their different advantages and whatnot, Gamma is one of my favorites for essentially having that next level, but having that more of a designer UX kind of approach. This is really cool, right? This is a more interactive site. I can change the background here. I can come in and immediately change some of the colors. This is something that allows you to, edit it directly, right? So this is more of a malleable output option if you were to go with a particular vibe coding approach. The difference here is that, we didn't necessarily have to give it as much guidance. As you can see, it truncates different objects in sequence, and it adds more of a story that's visually appeasing than some of the output that might just be modular or blocks. However, all of these things can be changed, and I do not want to say that one tool is constantly going to be better than the other. They can all produce really kind of amazing looking visuals. It's just you have to use them in kind of the right format. So here's going through a little bit more of my early journey. This kind of highlights my failure as a financial sales representative back in the early 20-teens. And here we have some additional information to get in contact with me. We can add different sites or different pages. And that's usually how it goes. This link seems to be right. Everything kind of carried over well, right? So we can just say, hey, like basically put anything you want in any area of this site. So for next steps, what I would say is you can publish it. You can add a button. Let's ask AI to do something here. I'd like to change the top header image to something like a beach and add flying toasters in the background. Let's see. It's going to edit that image. We'll see about the flying toasters. And finally, we'll go check in on Claude. So this is the Claude artifact. It has my name again. It has kind of all the traditional information. You can tell that this is more of an app type of approach. If we look at these two kind of side by side, right, we're almost looking at similar modular approaches that are vertical in nature, but obviously, very kind of responsive to different types of designs and whatnot. And this one is pretty cool, right? I really like Claude. I always have been a fan. Again, you're still going to see like some awkward areas here that could be consolidated, right? There's never going to be that perfect UX design. Like for instance, this area right here has a long distance to it, and it's actually longer than this one. That's something that would drive me absolutely crazy, right? But that might not drive you crazy. You see a lot of the other things here are working well. Looks like the hyperlinks are working correctly. Literally, like if you've never vibe coded before and you want like the easiest lo-fi thing in the world that's like actually a practical tool you can use, this would be it. This is kind of what I would suggest to you is like, hey, if you're brand new to vibe coding 101, try something like this. Go sign up for the sites, sign up for the tools, try them out. I would say if you actually wanted to build like a website and actually build something that's a little bit more, I'd say, in depth with more customization that's not going to break, definitely go with Gamma. One of the things I found with Lovable is that Lovable works tremendously well. But what happens, and this is also for the artifacts on Claude too, is if you overload it with too many complex tasks and animations, it sometimes won't be able to debug its own code. And you'll actually have to take that over to a different platform, or you have to go into it yourself. That can sometimes be a bit of pain in the butt. Especially if you haven't coded in a while like me, or if, it's been a few years. So then what I would say is, stick with kind of the simple ones. There are definitely some cool items that you can build as it pertains to some of these tools. For instance, I can show you one of the ones I made. So here's a thing that I created for creating AI strategies for professionals at certain areas of work, and it has a lot of different custom options here that allows you to kind of pick what type of professional you are, what role you are. Are you a manager, a CEO? You could pick your particular remit, if you will, under your company. So I could work in HR. I have like monthly reviews. I'm looking at data 5 to 15 hours a week. PowerPoint's the way. And, I have kind of my boss who I report to. A lot of the kind of performance that they're tracking is going to be through periodic review meetings. What is your biggest operational bottleneck? You could say, stakeholder communication. What is your strategic priority? And you could say, enhance team alignment. This is like a kind of cool tool that I made that was super lo-fi that basically just demonstrates how you could add like filters, drop down menus. But when you think about like prime UX design, a lot of that ends up coming to how can you shorten the length it takes for someone to complete an action? And in your design, how can you simplify that journey in a product standpoint? Specifically the flow as you go either kind of left to right or top to bottom. I kind of went through multiple iterations just of changing kind of some of the drop downs to actual buttons themselves. So this is a cool way of also showing how you can then create some of these kind of refined UX journeys. This output has, I think, over 300 outputs that demonstrate like which roles you're in and how many hours you spend on different tasks, and then the associated tasks that you have. This provides a suggestion with how you can then combat and kind of work through all of those next steps. So it gives you kind of like a realistic action plan that's zero cost, lo-fi. And when you think about, putting together a data strategy, if you will, a lot of that kind of comes to life when you're looking at the actionability of something, aka the feasibility. Is this going to happen, or is there no shot in heck that this happens? That's up for you to decide. This is a quick 101 that I wanted to show you. Vibe coding is kind of cool. There's a lot of different really neat things you can do here. It's definitely one of those areas where the more you get your hands wet, the more fun you'll have and the more you'll learn. And it's also an area where, I kind of urge you when you're starting to vibe code is like, think about your goal, right? Like, try to add value, right? The opportunity cost with wasting a lot of time on silly stuff with AI is high. And once you actually learn it, you might regret some of that time spent on non-value adding functionality. Take that as a grain of sand. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.